Above a Chinese river sits the tallest stone Buddha ever carved. Over 70 meters tall, 1,300 years old, an ancient wonder of the world.
This must take its place amongst the great monuments of antiquity.
The giant Buddha of Leshan, carved where carving anything seemed impossible, by one extraordinary man who triumphed over evil, endured a horrible fate, and suffered an untimely death, all to give China a sacred treasure like none other.
The Leshan Buddha is truly an engineering feat.
Mongol invaders attacked it. Killer earthquakes rocked it, and still it survived. But now, Leshan's giant Buddha is fighting for its life against the modern world. A team of Chinese scientists is racing to unlock the secrets of this ancient man-made marvel, hoping they can save it before it crumbles into dust. Some 1,600 kilometers from China's capital, Beijing, in the heart of Sichuan province, there's a place where three rivers converge on their way to join the mighty Yangtze. At their meeting place lies the city of Leshan. Millions come here from all over China and across the world. They come to see a man-made marvel, the tallest stone Buddha ever carved. Leshan's giant Buddha, towering 71 meters above the river. A sight no one ever forgets.
It is so much bigger than I ever imagined.
There's nothing like it in the world.
I feel blessed I came to see it.
But for the thousands who worship here, Leshan's giant Buddha is more than just a tourist attraction. And for experts in Asian archaeology, like Professor Charles Hyam, it's an encounter with greatness.
It is, beyond any doubt, one of the great monuments of the ancient world.
For more than 1,000 years, a community of monks has devoted itself to the Leshan giant Buddha. These monks have a saying: the Buddha is a mountain, and the mountain is a Buddha. A saying that's literally true.
The most extraordinary feature of this remarkable monument is the way in which the Buddha is not only so colossal, but it's cut right back from the cliff face. And so this gives you some idea of the enormous amount of rock that would have had to be taken away in order ultimately to create what we see.
Leshan's giant Buddha was chiseled out of a 100-meter-high sandstone cliff. Its middle finger alone is taller than a 3-story building. Each massive foot can accommodate more than 100 people. It's 4 times the size of Mount Rushmore's heads, and twice as high as Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. It even dwarfs the Statue of Liberty. Carving this giant began in 713 AD. During China's Tang Dynasty. Using only simple hand tools, its carvers finished it in less than a century, thanks to unwavering faith and hard work.
It's hard to imagine how people in the past could have built this 71-meter Buddha without any modern engineering techniques.
No ancient Buddha carved of stone can rival its 71 meters. But being number one's an honor tinged with sadness. For centuries, the Lashan Buddha shared the spotlight with two other world-famous giants. Afghanistan's Bamyan Buddhas, 55 and 37 meters tall. Until the Taliban blew them to bits in 2001. The loss of the Bamyan Buddhas makes preserving the Lashan Buddha even more important, because this giant's also under threat. Not from dynamite, but from equally lethal forces. Corrosive rain and wind, polluted air, and even the impact of millions of worshippers are slowly turning this massive sculpture into rubble. While river currents relentlessly attack its foundations. But a dedicated team of conservation experts won't let this Buddha go down. They're fighting back on land, on sea, and in the air. Mixing modern technology with ancient engineering. Even risking their own lives to save this ancient wonder from an enemy it was never built to face. The modern world. It's a battle against time, and time is running out.
There is still so much we do not understand about the Leshan giant Buddha. So many secrets to uncover.
But day after day, they carry on the fight. Inspired by the example of one incredible man who lived over 1,000 years ago. A simple monk whose love and courage gave this giant gift to China and the world. He vowed to end the suffering he saw by building the Lashan Buddha. A vow that drove him to commit an act of unspeakable horror, and ultimately cost him his life. In south-central China, a group of scientists is racing to uncover the secrets of a giant stone Buddha before it crumbles into the river and is lost forever. Science holds the key to the giant Buddha's future. But the Lashan monks are the guardians of its past. In a special chapel, they honor the man who brought this miracle of stone into the world. 1,300 years ago, in the year 700 AD, Lashan's 3 rivers are the heart of its economy. A rich harvest for fishermen, and a liquid highway for merchants. But where those rivers meet, strong currents collide, creating a death trap.
Where the 3 rivers met, the currents were very fast. Many boats sank, and many people died. The locals believed a river monster was responsible.
One Buddhist monk vows to tame the monster's angry spirit. His name is Haitong, and he has seen too many people drown. Haitong prays as he has never prayed before, seeking an answer to the impossible challenge of calming a raging river. Finally, he knows what he must do. In his mind, only the most powerful force in the universe can defeat such a powerful demon, the force of the Buddha himself.
The Buddha exercised a luminous power over natural forces, and one of those natural forces is the power of water. The Buddha could bring rain, the Buddha could ward off enemies, and the Buddha could save boatmen.
But saving the boatmen means doing the impossible. Haitang must recruit skilled stone carvers, find the money to pay them, and ask them to risk their lives working 70 meters high with only simple hand tools, carving the Buddha's holy image into Leshan's sheer cliffs to calm its clashing currents. A challenge this man understands. His name is He Yinglin, and he's one of China's leading stone carvers. He's carved over 3,000 Buddhas. At Oriental Buddhist Theme Park, only 500 meters from Leshan's giant Buddha, he's spent the last 10 years carving replicas of some of the world's most famous Buddhist statues.
I believe that Haitong investigated many places before he decided where to carve the giant Buddha.
By astonishing good fortune, if you could pick one spot anywhere in the world to hand-carve a Buddha, that place would be Leshan.
The entire mountain is composed of red sandstone, which is rare in the world. Red sandstone is very easy to carve. It requires very little strength. It's a great material for carving a Buddha.
But if carving Leshan sandstone was so easy, why did Haitang make his task so much harder by carving a gigantic 70-meter Buddha? As it turns out, Leshan's sandstone cliffs are not only easy to carve, they make carving big the best way to go.
The mountain was ideal for making a giant sculpture, but it was not suitable for a smaller one.
That's because Leshan's sandstone is wet, saturated with rain from Sichuan's damp climate. Carve it, and it starts to dry out, because carving exposes more surface area to sun and wind. A smaller carved statue dries out faster than a big one, because more of its body mass is exposed surface area. And the faster a carving dries out, the faster it crumbles into dust.
Once the water is gone, then the sculpture is dead. It will begin to weather and the surface will peel off.
In this part of China, big carvings outlive small carvings, unless they're sheltered from the elements, something people here have recognized for hundreds of years. Only meters from the giant Buddha, there's an ancient subterranean world where networks of catacombs lace their way through the surrounding mountains. Inhabited by the guardians of the dead. Carved during China's Han Dynasty around 200 BC, these tombs are evidence of a carving tradition that was already ancient in Haitang's day. They're also memorials to the time when an exotic Indian religion first arrived in China. Buddhism.
The earliest evidence of Buddha's images in China was found in Sichuan during the Han Dynasty. Images of Buddha or Buddhist icons engraved onto stone walls inside tombs, local tombs.
But Sichuan's most magnificent Buddhist memorial soars far above the ground. This is Shan, a 4,000-meter mountain, less than 20 kilometers from Leshan. Home to China's first Buddhist temple, and one of China's holiest Buddhist sites. 1,300 years ago, Mount Olmei would have been Haitang's spiritual beacon. His giant Buddha faces in its direction. Haitang's giant Buddha was on sacred ground. The sandstone mountain was perfect for carving, and Haitang had master carvers working for him. But all this still doesn't explain how one simple monk managed to carve the world's tallest stone Buddha over 1,000 years ago on an inaccessible site, surrounded on 3 sides by thick vegetation, with a raging river at its base. The story of how he succeeded is astonishing, inspirational, and tragic. In China's Sichuan province, a giant stone Buddha stands guard over a treacherous river junction. A spiritual magnet drawing thousands of worshippers. And a massive challenge for those dedicated to preserving it. Even a routine cleaning of the world's tallest stone Buddha means putting lives on the line. 71 meters in the air. This is not a job for the faint of heart.
老板，你们注意到安全哦，刚才我交代的保险绳。
It's also as close as anybody today can get to experiencing how Haitang's workers carved this giant Buddha. Records show that Haitang and his stonemasons carved from the top down, slowly transforming solid rock into a 33,000 cubic meter work of art. If anybody knows what that's like, it's He Yinglin. In 1991, He and his team carved a 173-meter sleeping Buddha into the side of a cliff. One of the longest reclining Buddhas in the world and the toughest job He's ever done. So tough, 3 of his carvers were injured working on the sheer cliff.
When I was carving the sleeping Buddha, I realized how hard Haitang's job must have been.
When He carves a giant Buddha, he starts with a model.
In the workshop, we make our clay models. This is a clay model. We will amplify it according to how big we want the finished sculpture to be.
The model acts as a 3D reference. It's divided into grids. Then, using modern survey equipment and lasers, it's plotted onto the cliff face the sculptors will carve. He can amplify a model like this up to 100 times on a sheer cliff face with millimeter accuracy.
This is the main difference between us and people in the past. In the past, people did not have the technology to amplify a small model.
But He thinks he knows how Haitang carved his giant Buddha without using a model. Haitang could have directed his masons by traveling back and forth across the river, observing from the far side, then returning to tell the carvers where to work, over and over again. An exhausting feat, possible only for a man of supreme dedication, and a man who had a detailed vision of his statue. A vision the conservation team must now resurrect. Conservator Peng Shiri and archaeologist Yuan Jin Chuan are trying to reconstruct what the Buddha originally looked like. Not an easy task, because the Buddha millions see today doesn't look the same as the Buddha Haitang carved 1,300 years ago. More than 1,000 years of wear and tear have worn away its outer layers,
但是他的脚步，你看，
哎，脚步对，
这一身长满了草。
我66年来。
And the Buddha's undergone multiple facelifts over the centuries.
这个栈道呢，因为后来这个大概是应该是60、70年代修的时候，把这眼睛呢搞了闭起来。
对，后面有一张62年。
哎，好像围闭了，后来完了睁开了。
很遗憾，这个就是他这个。
Hard as it is, the team must find the answer. In 1996, the Leshan giant Buddha became a World Heritage Site. Since then, any restoration work must be based on the Buddha's original appearance. And these photos are the only clues. But even the oldest photo is only 130 years old. So the team looks further back in time, and some 30 kilometers downstream from Leshan. At a place called Jiajiang, Yuan Jinchuan believes he's found the smoking gun. Jiajian's sandstone cliffs are covered with carved Buddhas. Some as old or even older than the giant Buddha of Leshan. Yuan Jinchuan believes that if Haitang had a model for his Buddha, he could have found it here.
When I first came here, I started from the highest point and studied the Buddhas one by one. When I reached this one, it immediately reminded me of the giant Buddha.
Why? Because its hair, its face, the position of its hands, and its legs all bear an uncanny resemblance to the Leshan Buddha. And like the Leshan Buddha, it gazes serenely over a river.
Haitong would have passed by the small Jiajiang Buddha on his way to Leshan. It could have impressed him so much that he chose it as the model for the giant Buddha.
If Yuan Jinchuan is right, this was the Buddha Haitong saw in his mind as he commanded his army of artisans. And they slowly turned a sandstone cliff into a spiritual masterpiece, while Haitong labored at the equally Herculean effort of paying for it.
It was a very difficult project. Haitong spent 10 years trying to raise enough money to build the Buddha. He begged all over the country.
Luckily, history was on Haitong's side. In 700 AD, China's Tang dynasty was in power, and Buddhism had never been more popular.
It was the great golden age of Buddhism, and to be an influential monk was to be a very important person within society, and Haitong was no exception. And here, obviously, he was able to marshal a huge following.
Legends say that Haitong amassed an enormous amount of money to build his giant Buddha, but his triumph would lead to tragedy. In Leshan, a greedy official hears of Haitong's fundraising success and decides he's entitled to a cut. When Haitong refuses to yield to bullying, the official threatens to gouge out his eyes. But Haitong would rather lose his sight than surrender the Buddha's money.
The sacrifice convinced the greedy official that Haitong's belief was strong. He gave up his idea of asking for money.
Haitong's grisly act saves his Buddha, but at a terrible price. When carving's gone no lower than the shoulders, he dies. As the funeral pyre consumes his remains, his vision of a giant Buddha goes up in smoke. carving comes to a halt, and all seems lost. Until China's most powerful man comes to the rescue.
One of the obsessions over centuries, thousands of years of Chinese emperors was the rebirth, was living for eternity. And one of the key elements of Buddhism that was so attractive to the rulers of China over the centuries was the fact that Buddhism gave you this option, this possibility of rebirth in eternity.
With eternity on his mind, the emperor opens his purse. The carvers go back to work and keep working until the Leshan Buddha is finished, some 90 years after Haitong made his vow. 1,300 years later, eternity is also on the minds of Peng Shiyi and the restoration team. But it's not their immortality they're worried about. It's the Buddha's. The giant sculpture's been attacked on multiple fronts by a deadly threat it was never built to survive. The 21st century. A sacred pilgrimage site in China's Sichuan province is home to the world's tallest stone Buddha. A Buddha that survived for 1,300 years. But now, there's fear that a recent catastrophe may have shortened its life. May 12, 2008. A magnitude 7.9 earthquake strikes Sichuan, killing over 70,000 people, rocking Leshan with powerful seismic waves.
When the earthquake struck, I felt like I was standing on water. Everything was moving. I thought the ground was going to collapse under me. The temple was swaying from side to side.
To find out if the massive quake has damaged the Buddha, a team of scientists must attempt something never tried before.